Good to see you, Alex. Is it clear where Gen Z is willing to take more risk and really embrace new technology to monetize for themselves and create new careers where there weren't careers before, or just to improve their own productivity?
Well, I think it's going to come down in both areas, actually. Sorry to be a little bit boring in my response, but one thing that this Gen Z report did note is that the Gen Z generation is incredibly entrepreneurial. I forget the exact stat, but something like 60% expect to found a business in their lifetime. So if you bring that stat in combination with the fact that they're going to be very heavy generative AI users, you can kind of see where there's going to be quite a lot of grist for that particular mill. Now, where that will manifest, I mean, honestly, Brad and Rachelle, I think the answer is pretty much everywhere. If this AI moment ends up even being half as good as the hype currently says that it might become, I don't think we're going to be able to get away from generative AI. So maybe the question should be, where will it not land versus where will it?
And so then as we look at how Gen Z, especially how they spend online, when you look at this shift we saw from, the sharing economy that came with, millennials and everybody else, but now you have this sort of instant access, but also a priority on services over things. How does that, if you're, say, an advertiser or a company thinking, how do I wrap my head around what Gen Z is looking for right now? What sort of questions do you ask?
I think it's a really good point. Although I'm a little bit perplexed on how everyone's decided that, we, the millennials and so forth, really wanted to rent everything instead of owning it. I wonder if that was more market forces pushing the generation into that. Spotify is great, but I hate having to rent my car, and its technologies. Anyways, when it comes to Gen Z and how they think about things, there's two main components that are standing out to me. One is the combination of social and commerce. I think that's very interesting. To me, that's just not how I shop, but it seems to be the most popular way amongst the generation after me. And then, it's a little bit tough to say, but I do think that ethical consumption is going to be a pretty big deal for Gen Z. And so I think that people who are merely marketing products around price versus how the product is made, how it impacts the world, and how the business behind it approaches culture and the overall marketplace is going to matter a lot more for Gen Z than what we're seeing in and amongst, I would say, other later generations.
How does this change the guards at the top of technology right now, and some of the companies that have been able to monetize best for many years now, really engaging with millennials and even some baby boomers and whatever's between baby boomers and millennials. I tend to forget sometimes. I'm sorry to those of you out there. But at the same time, they've been the ones that have been able to try and figure out and fine tune and drive algorithms around engagement. What of them now?
Well, it's a great question. And I don't think it's bad that we always forget that Generation X exists, because I don't think they want us to perceive them in general. So we can just leave them to one side. On the big tech point, it's developing is perhaps the best way to go about it. There's quite a lot of parts in the AI world that I think about as it relates to technology, startups, and kind of incumbents. There's large cloud platforms, your Microsofts, your Amazons, your Googles that are powering the back end of this stuff. There's a lot of startups that want to deploy AI tech into the market. And then there's a lot of companies that want to build the models themselves. And so when we think about where the impact will land across the technology corporate landscape, like pertinent to your financial audience, it seems that everyone's kind of got a piece right now. And so when we think about what's going to change in the market and what that will demand from these companies across the AI stack, it's a little bit unclear. But what is clear is that everyone is desperate to not fall behind. And I'm sure you guys talked about NVIDIA's earnings report the other day that showed that demand for the kind of the building blocks of this AI technology, the chips themselves, is insanely high because no one wants to get left behind. So to me, we're still kind of in the rat race phase, which is very exciting for us reporters. If I was a shareholder of one particular company, I might be a little worried that I would bet on the wrong horse. But I think it's going to be everywhere all at once, to quote the movie title.